Welcome to Caleb's Basketball Pod. As promised, we start our NBA team preview section this week. We're kicking you off with Atlanta. We're going to try to do alphabetical order. We're going to go like city alphabetical wise. So, of course, that means we would kick you off with the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm looking forward to this episode because there's sure a lot to talk about for this Atlanta team. Looking at the roster I have in front of me, we have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kofi Burfict, Dyson Daniels. We have Mohamed Gul, Jalen Johnson, Luke Kennard. Some other notable players, Nakwa. He's very good. Center, backup center to Kristaps Porzingis. We have Zachary Rocher. We have Jacob Toppin, Trae Young, Keaton Wallace. I mean, some of the guys probably are not going to get much playing time, but I do like a lot of the players. I'm thinking when healthy, the rotation, the starting lineup will probably be Trae. I don't see Luke Kennard starting, although he is a small forward. A shooting guard. I think they'll probably go Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson. I'm going to say they go small and they throw Rocher in at the 4 or Jalen Johnson, and then they start Kristaps Porzingis at that center spot. I think they bring Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the bench along with Luke Kennard. And all in all, I like Atlanta's roster. I think they're really set up to, I'm not going to say win an NBA championship, but I do think they're set up to make a decent one if we look at it. I think that Jalen Johnson healthy was turning into a star. I believe that's what allowed you the opportunity to get rid of DeAndre Hunter. The only problem with that is you got guys that are not on the roster now. I think if you're Atlanta, you could have made a better trade to send DeAndre Hunter off and get guys that would be a part of your future. You did do that. You did really get draft picks. You did get, at this point now, you've saved cap. And that cap may have helped you bring in Kristaps Porzingis, throwing away George Niang in that trade. But besides that, you could have got like a younger piece, I want to say, that saved you money too. But that's all in the past. You did get Walker Alexander, huge pickup. We saw what he did in Minnesota. He is very good at not containing SGA, but giving SGA problems because they are cousins and they do know each other. He does do a very good job of defending SGA. And that's all you can really ask for. You have to make things more difficult on him. They're a very long and lanky team, which makes it really hard to score on defensively. If they play defense, Quinn Snyder's teams are not known for defense. But if they play defense, it's going to be hard for teams like Cleveland and even maybe New York to score on these guys with the length, because you have to realize you have small guards in Brunson, Garland, and Mitchell in New York and Cleveland. So scoring on the length, if they do an all-length lineup, like say you replace Trae Young with like say Walker Alexander, then you may get a lot of stops there. You may eventually bring Trae Young in for the offense, but you have that ability. And that's what you want. That's what you need. You want the ability to switch, to change. Let's not forget Nakwa coming off the bench. Had an amazing year last year as a backup center. I think there's even a world where he starts at the center spot and you put Porzingis back at the 4. I believe that could happen. Maybe bring Zachary Rocher off the bench, and then you have another key bench player. I'm interested to see who will take over the backup point guard duties, because we know Trae Young's your starter. I think that's something they kind of lack at. But a lot of people are saying the East is wide open and there's maybe only 2 favorites with injuries to Tatum and Halliburton. So I do think it's like just an opportunity for Atlanta to to get a top 4 seed. And I'm serious on saying I think they have the roster to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. And if they get to the playoffs, especially as a top 4 seed, like, don't count them out, because we saw Indiana go to the NBA Finals as a lower seed and unexpected this past season. I would be surprised if Atlanta don't make a run and they give themselves an opportunity to go to the finals. You have to look at Trae Young in the playoffs is different. We seen it a few years ago when he took the Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's another level to Trae's game, and I think he likes it even more when there's more pressure and more kind of eyes on the game. I think he loves when the eyes are on him because he wants to be that guy. He wants to be the guy that takes everybody down, tells them that he's taking them down, and just does it and gets all the recognition. I think he loves that. I think he loves the spotlight. He's one of those guys that you don't want to play in those big games because you know he's going to show up. So just don't discount Atlanta. And we saw Dyson Daniels. We saw how good he is. He's someone else I want to keep an eye on. Led the league in steals, and it wasn't even close. I do think there's a world where if Atlanta has a top 10 defense, he could be Defensive Player of the Year. And that's a huge stat, and it's not surprising. I mean, we saw potential from Dyson Daniels all the way when he was playing over in the G League, and he was in the All-Star Weekend, and we saw potential from him. So I'm not surprised at all by that. But I think this Hawks team's interested in their wild card. Because if guys stay healthy, I believe they could go very far and give themselves a shot to win, like at least come out of the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying win a championship. I'm saying possibly come out of the Eastern Conference. We're gonna look at the Atlanta Hawks projected win total here. And we are going to give our prediction whether it's higher or lower. But I want to say, like, let's not count them out at all, because I think there's a chance. East is open. I do think they're going to be fighting, like, I want to say Orlando, maybe Milwaukee. I would see Miami in there. I don't see Boston in there. Don't see Indiana in there. Detroit, most definitely, I see in there. And I think those are going to be the teams, Orlando, Atlanta, Detroit, fighting for the kind of the seeds after New York and Cleveland, however those may fall out. And maybe even Milwaukee. And maybe even if one of those teams like separates themselves, maybe they take a number 2 seed. I do think that's a ceiling for one of those teams. Not only Milwaukee, but maybe Atlanta or Orlando. Maybe they pick up some wins over Cleveland or New York or both, and then they find themselves there around a tie, and they possibly get there. They're possibly a top 2 seed. I could see a world where that happens because this Atlanta team's good, and we know how tough they play Cleveland and New York. They have the advantage over Boston, in my opinion, at this point. They're a better team than Milwaukee. They're up there around Detroit and Orlando, but they're a better team right now than Indiana because of Indiana not having Halliburton. So I think Atlanta's going to make a really, really good one this year. And I think it's your last opportunity because there's a possibility maybe Trae leaves next offseason, or if things don't go how they planned, that possibly they don't keep Trae Young past the trade deadline if they're not playing up to standards. But this may be your last shot to make something and keep Trae long term, and possibly make a run at competing for a championship, because maybe you do really good this year. Maybe some players want to join you next year. There's a world where I could see that happening, and especially because of how Trae Young plays. Their projected win total is 47.5. If they go over that, that's 50 wins. So that's really tough to see them go over. I don't see 50 wins. I could see anywhere from 46 to 48 wins and a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. At that point, I'm going to go under because there's more of like that 46 to 47 than there is that 48 in my opinion. But it's not about the regular season as much as I think they're going to be dangerous when we get to the playoffs because Trae Young is that type of player. So, my biggest takeaway from this episode is watch out for Atlanta. They have some depth lineups. They have some really good lineups that you could bring out at different points. You could go smaller. You could even play Nickeil Walker-Alexander at the 3, get some shooting on the floor. You could go bigger, where you play Porzingis at the 4, and you get some length and size on the floor. You could even go so big that your smallest player is Nickeil Walker-Alexander. If you need a defensive lineup and you need some stops, and you have him, Daniels, Johnson, Porzingis, and Nagua, and these guys, they're going to compete. They're a young team. You brought in a champion, Kristaps Porzingis. This guy's going to tell these young guys how you win. He's been there. He's done that. And people's going to say, yeah, but Boston went through the playoffs without. They did. They went through the playoffs, a lot of it without Porzingis when they won the championship. But who made the difference in winning the championship? It was most definitely one of those players was Kristaps Porzingis, and he showed up in the NBA Finals and helped them walk away. Playing through an injury, Hort, he went there, he did that. That's huge for Atlanta. And I seriously, I love this Hawks team. I think they're going to be a underweighted league pass favorite of mine. When the season starts, you're going to find me talking about Atlanta a lot because the style of basketball they're going to play, one and gun, getting up and down the floor, is going to be very similar to the Indiana Pacers that just took them to the NBA Finals. So watch and see, and who knows what may happen, but Atlanta's dangerous this year. Thank you guys for joining. We're having another one, hopefully a couple next week. I want to thank you guys for tuning in.